Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar about having money conversation over Christmas. So it's glad to have you all here. We know it's a very difficult topic to talk about anyway, anytime in the year, but we thought the Christmas time is probably one of the easiest to really start a conversation with your family and friends and to kind of like have a feeling for the next year how you could work better on your money feeling and relationship. And Olga, what is your money conversation throughout Christmas? Do you have it with your family or not
I
really?
actually have a lot of money conversations over Christmas. It actually starts already before Christmas when all of these envelopes come in to donate stuff. So I usually have a money conversation with my kids about where to donate, what to
Okay.
support, and why supporting other people in need is such a good time over Christmas. And naturally, it then always leads in having a conversation over money. What is it? How is it being earned? Where does it go? What does happen with my money? And we make this kind of a habit. So every year in December, we decide like a family where the family donation will go to. And it is a very, very wonderful experience.
That's a nice way to start
Yeah.
into the Christmas evening. And I mean, we know from stats, right, that money or the conversation about money is one of the biggest taboo topics to talk about. It's actually ranked on the first or second level of the taboo topic. So people are even more willing to talk about politics or religion and sex than it is really about the finances. So how does this come from, and how do you handle this at home? How did this come a normal conversation?
For me and for
Yeah.
the children, well, it just developed like that because of all of the donation stuff that came in. But in general terms, I think having a money conversation is a very good idea for anyone. If you look at it, not that much about how much do you earn, what's mine, what's yours, but if you look at it, what the money can do for you. And when it now, in my case, comes to the children conversation, well, it is a very fitting topic for the season as well to explain all kinds of things about poverty, the value of money, all of these things. If you have no children, it makes for a splendid conversation as part of the New Year's resolutions.
Absolutely.
I made it a New Year's resolution for myself this year to really get on with investing for that matter. And that's me, the woman that has been dealing with financial confidence for more than 9 years. I still think I could do better.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also just going through my investments and trying to make them even better and more sustainable, especially. So also something I'm working on. But we are here today to help you as well if you haven't started already money conversations on the dinner table with friends and family, to maybe give you some hints and tips and tricks that you can start having this conversation and probably feel a little bit better about it. But just to give you an overview and also the feeling that you are not alone in this world who doesn't feel good about talking about money, we know that almost 50% actually feel embarrassed talking about money, and a huge amount feel stressed about it. So besides just not feeling comfortable, there is really an inconvenience about how do I bring it up, and how can I approach my friends without looking stupid. And I think that's really important. Also, if you see the feedback we received from people, why they don't like to talk about money. And it's often interesting to hear why it is so difficult to talk about it, because money is something we go and earn from Monday to Friday. For 5 days a week, we earn money to live, to enjoy life, and still it's not something normal
Well,
to talk
there is
about.
this research that showed, right, that 4 out of 10 women would rather like to talk about their own death
Yeah,
than to talk about money. But I think as a taboo subject as it might be, when you talk about it, research has suggested that 6 out of 10 people actually increase their overall financial confidence. I also think that it is very important, in particular for women, to talk about money with other women, even for the sake of understanding where your market value is. There's so limited transparency about salaries,
yeah,
about what other people do. So the more courage you have to actually approach the money subject, the more information you get. And therefore, it also gives you new ideas.
yeah.
I mean, it's needless to say that, only 1 out of 10 women actually finds good financial advice from a financial advisor. 9 out of 10 use their family and
Family and
friends.
friends. Yeah.
And therefore, if that being the case, it's inevitable that you need to have a money conversation.
And this brings us exactly to the next point, how to approach it. And we listed here kind of like a little overview, and we go into each detail now for the next couple of minutes, how you could start your conversation with yourself, because maybe you need to start with yourself and ask yourself a few questions, how your relationship to money is and how you feel about money. But then also to how to talk it with friends and maybe your kids, like Olga does, and bringing up the donation topic, or how you just integrate the money topic into the daily habits. Because if you go shopping, that you maybe ask the kids from time to time to pay for something, so just that they get an understanding of how expensive things are. And of course, partner is one of the most important one to talk to, but also a difficult one. And then work, of course, that's then the discussion about how you can find out what's your wealth and how you can maybe ask for a pay raise. But let's dig deeper to start with the friends conversation. And I actually experienced this a lot with my friends, that I've never talked about it before I actually came into this money and finance thing, and it got more into my life. I was the one approaching it more often, and it kind of like had a huge effect on my friends as well, because they started thinking about it from a completely different angle. And exactly that's something nowadays, even we talk more often, and we talk about, what relationship you have to money, and maybe what you spend on, especially for Christmas. What kind of gifts do you buy? Do you just buy gifts that you think, are expensive, or maybe you think more about something that's with a purpose and do maybe a little bit of a donation link to it? So you can really go and have an open conversation about it. You will not feel embarrassed, that I can tell you. It's probably more normal than you think. Here on the left side on the slide, you can see a couple of questions you could start asking about. For example, what's the biggest expenditures they have, or what was a good investment they've done and they're very proud of and they really like still today, and they feel the money was really worth to spend. And most likely there are also the opposite, things where they spend money on which they feel they could have spent it better, on better things and better tools, or invested it smarter. So start with these little things, and you will see that the discussion triggers also interest on your side, and you can then reflect on your way, if that would be the same feeling for you, or if you would feel differently. So that could also be, but it definitely gives you transparency on how you feel about money.
And I think it's always, because it's such an unusual subject to talk about for everybody, that the level of discomfort you feel yourself actually popping the question, you just have to see that the other side, your friends, feel the same, right? And it's never a good strategy to ask, so how much do you earn? But having a general conversation about where does one donate, or if somebody has an advice. So I usually start with it saying, I have this amount and I feel I could do better with my money. What is it that you do? Do you have any tip or trick for me? Usually makes for a really good dinner conversation. It's actually surprising how funny and interesting then it gets.
Yep. Also, when you talk about, we just had this lately in a dinner place where we went around the table and everyone had to mention his best and his worst investment. And that was actually quite fun too, because, sometimes there were investments, they were quite small, but they really regretted just spending it. And then you could see how could you have done better, and what would have been maybe things or discussions you could have beforehand, so that you would have done a smarter investment with that.
I think important to remember is that nobody is a super expert in finance and nobody knows everything. So getting advice from people is very helpful. And just admitting the sheer fact that there is not the one and only super strategy actually helps having the conversation.
Absolutely.
I love your hat, by the way.
Oh yeah, we are very Christmas mood already,
I feel very
right?
Christmassy today. Yeah.
Doesn't even bling bling, but
yeah. Anyhow,
talking about with your partner about money,
I find that the most difficult thing to do, in all honesty. And what I learned now advising women on how to deal with money is, surprisingly, that in many cases in a couple situation, the investment doesn't happen because one can't agree on the common cause or on the common investment strategy. So talking to your partner about money is something that every woman should do, just to get the sheer transparency of what is happening. But I also find it a very, very difficult conversation to have, in all honesty. How do you do that, Desiree?
I find it very difficult too. And I think it depends a bit on, I think now is a good time to talk about it because you can kind of like plan a little bit the next year. And because both of us are self-employed, this is actually a discussion as well. You know, you need to discuss how are things going next year? How do the projects look like? Do we have bigger investments we would like to do? How do we cover these investments? How do we go on? Family planning is a topic. You know, these are all topics where you then need to find a way and agree on a strategic plan, especially on the goals. And if you see that you kind of like have not the same match on timings, most likely, then you need to see how you keep going. But I think it's a very, very important discussion to have. And what I feel is hugely important is not to link it to any other, you know, let's call it relationship issues. So really keep it a money conversation and not bind it back to, you know, you don't spend enough time with each other, both are working too much. It's really, don't bring in other topics, really focus on the money conversation. Very, very focusedly, and also talk about your feelings about it or your dreams, not that what you want. It's just try to formulate it in a different way, and that helps already as well.
I think what is very helpful is it's not a blame game. It's not about who spends what and who has overspent where. I think the key to success, at least with any partner, for me has been if you approach it from what do we want from a future.
Yeah.
And how do we want to approach it? How much money will be needed? Then it kind of becomes a conversation of equal and unequal grounds rather than pointing the figures to one single thing, you overspent on this credit card bill. Yeah. That never goes down very well.
Yeah. And especially on the big bills, right? Focus on that one and how you want to cover it together. And then plan for your next goals and investments, and then see how both put in money to achieve it. So that helps as well. Just have one goal per year maybe and work on that one. Not too many investment goals in 1 year helps as well.
So I usually book a money date with my husband.
Oh,
and that's actually quite nice. If you discuss about,
do you do it in a restaurant or at home?
Actually, we tried both, but it's like a money date where you speak about the future and where you speak about roughly how much is needed, and that helps. Since we made the money date a habit, we all feel much, much better. And I think for all the women that are listening to this, it is important to have this conversation because research shows that most of us don't. Many women are involved in the day-to-day financial planning for the household. So all of the budgeting, the daily bill spending, the daily expenses. Very few of us actively involved in financial planning. And because we do tend to live longer, being involved and understanding the long-term financial planning is absolutely vital for a secure future.
Yeah. I think also important is that the woman talks and really brings it up on the table if the woman works part-time and looks after the child, for example, or takes care of an elderly family member. I think it's important also here to really make sure that you have especially your future safe, and that maybe your husband or partner helps you to also invest in your pension plan or whatever it is that you might not be able to afford at the moment. So just make also sure you have this conversation. You don't have to feel bad about it. Your unpaid work to look after the child is work too and can be paid. So
actually in Switzerland, we know that it is a billion figure of people delivering care work, not only the mothers, but also the grandparents.
Yeah, absolutely. That brings us to the employer conversation with your boss. I feel, did you ever have this in your life?
Well, the money conversation with my boss? Well, yes, because there is this annual review process. Whoever works in a corporate at this point in time will be subject to an annual review process, right? This is the time where you get feedback. And obviously, ultimately, you would ideally also try to increase your income. So I did have money conversation with my bosses. Quite frankly, at the beginning, they were not very successful until I started to prepare for them properly. And this strategy that we are listing here on the chart, for that matter, doesn't only work when you talk to your boss. It also works when you are negotiating. which is really to approach this conversation prepared. List your achievements, list how your achievements have helped not only the company, but the overall business objectives, and preferably also your boss. And once you put this down on a piece of paper, then it is very easy to actually go and make an ask. Because then in the conversation you are prepared, you know what you have contributed, and you can very easily ask what you expect in return. And my advice would be to think about exactly before the conversation, what is it that you want? Do you want more money? And if, their reaction is kind of lukewarm, yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's difficult this year.
Yeah, be prepared to make another ask.
Yeah.
And another ask can be that you want more time, or that you want an education, or that you want to be sent on a conference, or anything, but that is useful for your daily work. But I would be very prepared to make another ask. And my personal experience has been that even if I didn't walk away with, maybe more money straight away, I walked away with more money 3 or 6 months later. Because it also takes a little bit of time for your employer and your boss to reflect. But since I made the second ask of some alternative, I never walked away empty-handed.
Yeah. And maybe that's because also if you have the year-end discussions, usually in November, December, maybe even try to approach it mid-year once, so that you have a first conversation, you get also a bit of an understanding where you stand in the negotiation and in the conversation, and then bring it up again a couple of months later, so that this is a topic you discuss, and maybe also point out throughout the year, if you have an achievement, that this is something you did now in addition to your work, and what actually in your responsibility area is. So that gives then also the line manager the confidence to maybe increase and ask for a pay raise for his team member.
Yeah, and I think key to that, linking to the beginning of this webinar, right, is to have transparency about where you feel your salary bandwidth actually is. And if there is no external data available, then having an understanding where your colleagues stand, and that's why it's so good to talk about money to your friends, helps enormously.
Absolutely. I found it actually the most difficult conversations.
Oh, I find the one with the partner much difficult.
No, I found that one more difficult.
Okay, see? There we go.
Children, we had this already, and I think Olga's approach is really good about involving it, especially with a donation, with a good habit. Maybe how I experienced it from my parents, because we had always with my parents a huge open discussion about money. They always also involved us in bigger investments, family investments. So, for example, when we bought a house, they involved us in that one and explained to us very, with tools and toys, how that works and how it works with the bank. And so we could understand that's actually not our house, but we can buy it and we get support. But my parents need to work to kind of like pay back to the bank. And I found that really helpful, because you understand better that you just not get everything for free, more or less. And then you move into a house and there is a big house and everything is yours. It's not exactly that way, but I found that very useful. And often also my mom just gave me money and asked me to go grocery shopping. And then I came back and was very shocked how expensive everything is. So that helps as well to just get an understanding in, how much a yogurt costs or just a bottle of milk. Because you as a child just go with the mom in groceries or with dad in grocery stores and you buy and you pay and it's done. But you actually don't really understand where the money comes from.
Yeah, I think talking about money to children, is going to fill another webinar that we're going to have next year. But there are two things you need to know. Number one, whatever we teach our kids about money forms their money beliefs for the future, in the same way like we have inherited the money beliefs from our parents and how they dealt with it. So starting very young, actually at the age of 7, before our money beliefs are already formed. And number two, allowing the kids to make their own experience and their own mistakes is very important. So whether you give them smaller chunks of pocket money, whether then later on you allow them to manage kind of smaller investments themselves and then debrief it, is one of the most effective tools Cambridge has found to teach kids about money.
Yeah.
And now we're a little bit over time, so
And I think just one other thing about earning money as a kid, give them little tasks to do in the household, and then that's how they can earn money. For me, it was ironing the clothes from my dad. So I earned money like that.
And you acquired ironing skills.
Exactly.
Which come very
and
handy
I earned
now.
money. Yes, this is kind of like a bit what Olga already mentioned. It is the foundation on how we teach our children about money, and it will be how our future will be formed and how our children will form the world with the money we inherit to them and what they will make out of it. I like it. It's a nice quote.
It's a beautiful quote.
For those who are interested, we also have a money conversation as cards. So these are 64 carefully selected questions that you can use to start money conversations. You can maybe use it as a little game or whatever. So you can order them on our website or just write to us and we are happy to send it over.
Yeah, I collected them from roughly 3 years of talking about money with people never mentioning money altogether.
And they're quite interesting questions in it. And to announce our next webinar, which will be shortly after New Year, on the 13th of January, where we will tangibly explain you the different financial products that are out there and help you to find and select the right one for you. So with that, we hope you enjoyed our webinar and we wish you Merry Christmas and a good holiday break, and we see us in 2020.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks.